So in this video, I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about these two rollerball pens from a company called Ohto. These are Japanese rollerballs. The first is called the Ohto Fude Ball, which is a 1.5 millimeter rollerball pen, sold in a bunch of different colors. I happen to have it in green, but it's a really interesting pen. Kind of notable because it's a 1.5 millimeter rollerball, which is not something we see too often. It's a very broad rollerball. You might see a ballpoint in 1.6 millimeter or something like that, but not too many rollerballs. And then we have this is called the Saiten Ball. And this is a very similar pen to the Fude Ball, but it's definitely less well known. It's a bit harder to find. It sells for about the same price. And it's kind of like a red version of the Fude Ball. It's not super notable, except that it has a different name. And I think it's only sold in red. But anyway, I've been using both of them a fair bit. And while the more notable of the two is the Fude Ball, just because it's so easy to find and it's sold in a variety of colors, I figured might as well spend some time talking about the Saiten Ball. Just for background, I wouldn't say I'm in any way an expert in Japanese, but Fude means brush or writing brush. And that's kind of a nod to just how wide the tip of this pen is. So you could see it's 1.5 millimeters at the tip. And the way they measure roller balls are typically different than how you would measure a ballpoint. Let's see if this is not a 1.6 millimeter Bic, but close to it. And you can see it's notably larger than this 1.0 millimeter Bic. And then this is the Saiten Ball. You can see very similar tip design. These two pens are basically identical, and we'll get into that next, but you can see those tips, very broad. So the Fude Ball is, I think online I read it's for making postcards, and it's basically for anything where like you would do just a lot of kind of like bigger, broader strokes. If you were kind of like you said, like writing a thank you card or something like that, where you just want a big, bold lettering and bright colors and very highly legible, but you don't need to do a whole lot of writing. You can see right here some of the details. Waterproof, fade proof. I would probably call it water resistant. Maybe it's fade proof, maybe it's not, whatever, but I would probably go water resistant. Anyway, it uses a pigmented water-based ink. It's a roller ball, so the ink is water-based and it's pigmented, which means like when you write, there's little pieces of pigment, like nanoparticles or whatever, pigment. They kind of sit on the paper and they don't get washed away so easily. This is not a refillable pen. It's a sealed rollerball. Unfortunately, I'm sure if you pulled out some of this front matter and put the ink in there, maybe you could refill it, but by design, it's not refillable. And this design, this sealed design, the way you would see with like some of the Uniball, like a Vision Elite or whatever, it's really tough to refill. But anyway, I'm sure people have done it. And then the price you can see right here is 150 Japanese yen. So that's like maybe $3 or so in the US, maybe $2.50, something like that. That's like after imports and things like that. It's not a direct conversion. That's the Fude Ball. I have it in green. Again, comes in a bunch of different colors. The Saiten Ball is, Saiten, I believe, means marking or marking up or grading, something roughly like that. And it's only sold in red. I believe it uses the same ink, that pigmented ink. You can see what they describe it as is the same here. Pigmented ink, water and fade proof, also 150 Japanese yen. So outwardly, it seems to be about the same pen. It's interesting because the Fude is sold in a red, so why have this in a red? This is sort of like the classroom or grading version of it. You can see the body is essentially the same, except there's a little window here, and this one is, you can see, it's almost, it's not super full, but it's almost entirely full. It's a relatively new pen. This Fude I've been using for some time. It's kind of on its way out. And there you can see here, this looks solid, but if you turn it, you could see, probably just make out some bubbles. Kind of see the bubble right there. And there you go, you just saw some movement. So as you'd imagine, as this thing goes down, you will see more of those bubbles as the amount of ink decreases. So the window is really nice. This one, you can see here, there's a very large bubble here. Clearly a lot of ink is missing from this one. This pen is almost done. Yeah, you can see like some rushed back. There's not a whole lot in there. It's probably like right around here, but no window here. I don't know why you would print over it. It's really nice to have the window, but they clearly did to get this kind of wave pattern or whatever that is. The pens are basically the same. Anyway, you could see that the Saiten Ball cap clips right onto the Fude Ball and vice versa. It's almost the same. The clips are basically the same. They have a little bit different markings at top and this kind of rounded thing, but no different. And it's the same clip. It's a really nice clip, sprung steel. I like this one a lot. As far as the writing samples go, this is kind of what really matters with a pen like this. There's really nothing to say about the body. We haven't said yet. A 1.5 millimeter rollerball is a very broad pen. It's kind of for making just broad strokes. It's not something you could really take notes on. It's going to bleed right through your paper. You can see quite visible bleed through, and you're putting down a lot of ink. I tried to look for some close comparisons to it. You have the Pilot Varsity, I think was a really good comparison. That is a fountain pen, but for me, it has that same sort of feeling to it. And then a European rollerball, they tend to go on the broad side. I thought was a pretty close comparison. Although the Waterman rollerball has kind of more of a watery ink than these. And you could see this new Saiten Ball is putting down a lot of ink, which is what you want for something that you, again, this one's designed for like a grading papers or something like that. I think normally a red pencil is more appropriate, which would be maybe making a mistake. You don't want to mess up someone else's work, but if you're using a pen, something broad that you could make big marks to is the goal. And this one definitely fits the bill there. You could see even on this very absorbent kind of printer style paper, it's you could see some of that ink glistening for a second there. It just means you're putting down a lot of ink. So not super practical day to day, but a lot of fun to use for jotting notes down, crossing stuff out. If you just like to scribble and things like that, this is a lot of fun. The Fude Ball, all of that is also true for, I would just note that this one, like I said, I've had this one for a couple of years and it's not writing as broadly as it was. Once that ink starts to get diminished, you don't get the same amount of like that really wet writing to it, but definitely it's no slouch. So it's definitely putting down a lot of ink, super smooth, no problem keeping up with you with the scribbling. I like this green a lot. You could see, it's a little bit hard to tell online when you're buying this, but as soon as it shows up, it's a kind of a faded green. And I was trying to pull some reference points just for color, which I don't really tend to do on the channel, but just to give you some evidence of it being a faded green. Here's a really bright green in this Bic, and here are some faded greens. This is like a seafoam or like a mint or something like that. This is more of a turquoise. So anyway, just some couple reference points, and they really do come through in this green. It's this like fun light green, and I don't know, I really like it. I have a soft spot for it in the same way I have a soft spot for the Fude Ball, even though it's not always the most practical pen, but a nice wide rollerball I think is something that's a lot of fun. Of course, the Pilot Varsity I think is also a nice way to go. Not everyone wants a fountain pen, but as far as practical, fun to use fountain pens go, this one is as close to a rollerball as you're ever going to get. This thing, very ink resistant, not too hard to refill. Sorry, not very ink resistant, very leak resistant, not too hard to refill. It always starts, even if this thing, I think I've had this Varsity, you could see how much ink is left in this one, which is essentially none. So I've had this one for some time. Still writes nicely. The Varsity is just a really exceptional pen, and you can check back on the channel to see multiple videos about the Varsity. Anyway, I think that pretty much covers it. just wanted to do a little quick reminder about that Fude Ball, because I've been using it a lot and really enjoying it, and pointing out that the Saiten Ball is a pen that exists, not as notable, but maybe something that's fun to pick up, especially if you like that little ink window, or you just want a really great red rollerball to add to your collection. That about covers it. Thanks for watching.